Hello, everyone. Welcome to the New Mexico Museum of Art. It's great to see everyone here. This is a symposium that has been a long time coming in conjunction with our exhibition, Poetic Justice, Judith F. Baca, Mildred Howard, and Jaune Quick-to-See Smith. An exhibition that is on view today and closes on June 19th. So you still have plenty of time to see it, but this is a fantastic exhibition. If you have not seen it yet, please do yourself a favor. We are so happy to be joined here today by two of the artists and one of the poets that are included in the exhibition. At left, Mildred Howard. At center, Jaune Quick-to-See Smith. And at right, Edie Tsong. Receive proper introductions here in a bit, but I'm going to leave that to Mary Scully, our head of curatorial affairs, and curator of contemporary art, and the curator of this exhibit. But before we do so, a little bit more housekeeping. I will give you a rough schedule of the events today. We've got actually a lot going on. So as far as this program is concerned, we will begin with Edie Tsong and her reading of her poem, How I Became Miss America. At that point, we will then lead into the conversation between Mary Scully, our two artists that are here in person, and Judy Baca, who is waiting for us on Zoom. We're delighted to have her here as well. And then there will be time for a question and answer with you all. At 1 o'clock, we will have a youth open mic, which will be fantastic. So please do stay for that. Also, during that time, we will have the library and archives of the museum open. This is a space that is open downstairs that most of you don't get to see on a day-to-day basis. And we will have a selection of poetry from our library and archives available for viewing by the public. So lots of things going on from 1 to 3 this afternoon, so please do stay for that. Finally, I would be entirely remiss if I didn't mention one of the last programs we're going to do as part of this exhibition on June 3rd, that's coming up here this Friday. DJ Rashawn Ahmad, who is somewhat legendary in this community and moonlights as director of Vital Spaces, will curate and film a DJ set in response to the Poetic Justice exhibition. Come and hear how he translates visual art into a sonic landscape of different genres and moods. Get immersed and stimulate your visual and audio senses. Not to be missed. So June 3rd, and by the way, that is our first Friday, and as of Friday, June 3rd, the museum will be open to everyone for free from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. So please do come. You don't have to worry about paying admission. One more chance to see Poetic Justice and to hear what a fabulous DJ Rashawn Ahmad is. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mary Scully. Mary Scully is head of curatorial affairs and curator of contemporary art at the New Mexico Museum of Art. She has curated exhibitions of contemporary and historic art, photography, and design in locations across the country, including the New Mexico Museum of Art, San Francisco Art Institute, and the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Previous positions include curator of the Governor's Gallery for Bill and Barbara Richardson and curator of special projects at the New Mexico Museum of Art. Prior to moving to New Mexico, she was director of exhibitions and the associate director of exhibitions and public programs at the San Francisco Art Institute and administrative director for the Fellows of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles. Please welcome Mary Scully.
Some of this will be a little repetitive, so I will try to edit out some of those things. But I want to thank Mark and thank all of you for giving us some of your time this Saturday to be here with us. I'm also personally very thankful that we're here today as this twice-canceled program is finally being realized, culminating and bringing together of these three remarkable artists, Judith Baca, Mildred Howard, and Jaune Quick-to-See Smith. Judy will be joining us virtually, and I want to thank her for doing that, and it was due to unforeseen circumstances. This exhibition, Poetic Justice, provided the museum an opportunity to share small cross-sections of work by each of these artists to the Santa Fe community and to visitors of the Museum of Art. they could see and experience the mastery of these artists, the power of their imagery, and their skillful storytelling in person. Today, we celebrate these highly accomplished artists who are also noted for their work as educators and as activists. The title of the exhibition plays off the literary term Poetic Justice, which most often involves the triumph of virtue over vice as it plays out over time. The implied duration is significant here in that it acknowledges the decades these women have been working tirelessly and often without appropriate recognition. The title also challenged the museum to be a little creative, so we took the opportunity to commission 3 New Mexico poets, Joaquin Bellamy, Levi Romero, and Edie Tsong, to create prose inspired by these women and their work. Those commissions led to a collaboration with our colleagues at Site Santa Fe, the Poetic Justice Billboard Project. Fragments of the commissioned poems were displayed on the site's building exterior during the first few months of the exhibition and provided a QR code leading to a website where you can hear the poets recite their works. This QR code is also repeated in the gallery here at the museum. Today, we're also pleased to have Edie Tsong here to read her poem, How I Became Miss America. I will introduce Edie in a minute. Following Edie's reading, I will join the artist for what I'm sure will be an animated conversation, and we'll break for questions with the audience. Without further delay, it is truly a great pleasure to introduce Edie Tsong. Edie is an artist and writer. Her socially engaged collaborations have been part of PICA's TBA Festival, the Paseo, and April meetings in Belgrade. She has exhibited at the New Mexico Museum of Art, the Mattress Factory, Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, Aspen Museum, Babel Kunz, and April meetings in Belgrade. She is the winner. I told you I was a loud talker. She is a winner of the Site Santa Fe Spread Grant, a VONA alum, and the regional chair for Kundiman Southwest for Asian American writers. She lives and works in northern New Mexico with her daughter.
Hi everyone. Okay, how is that? Better? Okay. It's really an honor to be here with all of you in this beautiful auditorium with these legendary artists. Some of you out here as well. So thank you for coming. I was so delighted when Mary invited me to write this poem, and I just want to share a little bit of the process. She sent me tiny little JPEGs of their work, and then I did a lot of Googling and listened to a lot of their interviews on YouTube. And what I really connected with was an interrogation of the politics of home, land, story, history, belonging, and longing. So I'll read you this poem, How I Became Miss America. Clay speaks of a geological process. Mountains erode, sediment gathers over time in riverbeds. In the studio, we use recipes combining different proportions of dirt from different parts of the country to make clay bodies. Rooting my fingers into the clay, I belong to a composite land, a place of my own making. Without the body, there's no beauty. I was born here in America. I am American. But the question has been asked of me, are you Chinese or Japanese? You look different. My parents are from Taiwan, but I'm from here. Isn't that China? The island my parents come from becomes imaginary. So, are you Chinese or Japanese? What color is the dirt in Taiwan? I've never seen it, but I remember the dark earth of Pennsylvania where my father pulled back the weeds and planted a garden that never grew. question is never asked. What do you find beautiful? At the bus stop on Devonshire Drive, a street lined with English tutors, ranch houses, and cottages. Why is your face so flat? Do you sleep on your face? She nudges the others to chime in. A girl who resembles my doll with blue eyes and blonde hair says, I don't think that's nice. I am equally uncomfortable with both of them. Father raises his right hand at the front of the courtroom, speaks with a mechanical cadence. Mother, pink cheeks and lips, corsage of white wedding flowers pinned to her chest, does the same. People clap. I squirm on the wooden bench, kick my shoes off. Mother says, too much noise. But I haven't said a thing. A neighbor takes me home. I lie on the front lawn for hours, frame the sky with my hands and take photos. Watching the shifting boundaries, cloud to sky, sky to cloud, there is no distinct separation. They come home waving small American flags. Chink, gook, jack, go home. Chink, gook, jack, go home. All weekend I practice. In my audition, the words change me. I enlarge the open eyes and mouths of my teachers and classmates. But I'm not chosen for the role of William Penn or any of the speaking parts for that matter. The teacher says, I think you'd make a cute Indian with your black hair. On stage, I paddle a cardboard canoe. I have no lines. I have no name. Did your mother put a bowl on your head and cut your hair? Every year, my family sits in front of the TV for the Miss America pageant. Miss Summer's eyes match her cornflower blue sequin armor. Look how her dress complements her shiny hair. I want to be Miss America. My father laughs. You can't. Look at them. Look at you. What would your talent be? New York, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Taipei. Subway, bicycle, the ferry, or scooter, there's no question of belonging, not belonging. Rhythm of letters on the flyer, Sonia Sanchez, slight and baggy tunic and pants of earth tones, crown of gray dreadlocks, her voice like insects, soft, then feral, never apologetic, each word a glowing orb. I fall under a spell. I flip through her book at the library. Each page shimmers like the surface of a lake. The tags securing my costume are coming undone. Underneath, I am blank. Your almond-shaped eyes are the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen. Your plump lips. I want to kiss those lips. The lips they said in Taiwanese, you could hang 3 pounds of pork from. Wearing the projections of others, I make myself more invisible until I become as subtle as a ghost. At the pier on the west side where I watch the sunset, colorful from the exhaust, a man jumps into the turbid water below. Is he crazy? He must be high. If he doesn't drown, he'll die from the pollution. I experience his momentary freedom floating on the water. I am lost. My English students at Shanghai Jiaotong Dashi are disappointed I look like them. A student reaches for the shared thick lens glasses and introduces himself. I am yellow. I am yellow. Yellow Emperor, Yellow River Valley. Americans formed the largest group of expats in Hong Kong in 1992. The Welsh manager hires me at Post 97, a fashionable all-night cafe, because you're Chinese, but not Chinese, if you know what I mean. Wink. Sometimes I spend half an hour looking up several characters, only to realize they are someone's name. The Chinese English dictionaries form a fortress around me. I flee my Chinese literature program, leaving a trail of incompletes, and head to the art studios. Clay teaches me to locate my body. Will it give me a home? Picture a crumpled piece of newspaper tossed about by the wind, found in collected string, paper, and words. Homelessness relates to ephemeral materials. The process has its own performance, one that doesn't require code switching. My fingers, hands, and body invent their own lexicon from what is missing, from a place that belongs in the future. The newspapers do not report my parents with 100,000 others waving the green and white flag of the Taiwanese Democratic Progressive Party. They chant, "Washi Daiwan, wa shi Jiongguolan. Washi Daiwan, wa shi Jiongguolan." I'm Taiwanese. I'm not Chinese. The residents of Roswell steal glances at me in the grocery, in the video store, on the sidewalk. My white boyfriend says too loudly, "Look at them checking you out. Those girls in flip-flops are totally checking you out." He points to them, drawing more attention to me. American and Mexican food served here. I devour every book on aliens in the Roswell Public Library. Alien simply means someone from somewhere else. Nobody is going to save me. I don a faded red gown from Goodwill, practical shoes, a cheap blonde wig, handmade satin sash with blanket-stitched black letters. Miss America. I will walk. I will take a walk. If anyone asks, I will say I am taking a walk. Everybody has a right to take a walk. Can an alien take a walk? Someone with hot pink lipstick smudged beyond the lips border says, "You look beautiful." They know I need to be beautiful. It's true. I need to be beautiful. What is beauty? This is a work day, an 8-hour walk from the outskirts of the city to downtown. By the end of the day, I am no longer playing a role or wearing a costume. I am simply Miss America. I am missing America. I am America. The sun has set. It is dark when I take the bus home. For a moment, home is simply home, a place where I land.
Thank you so much, Edie. I get choked up. I've heard her read that twice. So we're working on fixing the video so Judy can not just be a blue square on the screen. We can see her from here. So I will start just briefly, not so much with a question, but to say that we have a series of ideas and topics to talk about. I'm hoping that as we go through these, that conversation will develop, and as part of that, a discussion about your work, your practice, and your biographies, I think will become a part of that. And I also want to encourage everybody who has not been into the exhibition yet to please go, because there's quite a bit of text in the exhibition about the works and about the artists. Yeah. We can hear you. But we want to see you, if possible. So I think we're working on that, but why don't we start just with a very basic question here, which was, what really drove you or inspired you to become artists? And also, all of you pursued the arts in an academic environment. So I'd love to know what influences that were on you, positive and negative. And And then did you find the kind of support and inspiration in the academy that you needed? And then also I'd say, are there any changes in present day? So
Say no.
yeah, that's why I asked the question actually.
Who do you want to begin first?
Mildred, why don't you start? And then we'll hear an extrapolation on the note.
I really didn't know that I was going to end up being an artist. I've always been curious about the world and always asked a lot of questions, not only to myself, but to my family, to my parents, my siblings. And so I guess over time, I realized that my way of talking about the world from which I come was through the visual arts. And it was late when I decided to get a graduate degree. I went in some ways it's similar to John's.
Yeah.
Because, you have jobs to pay your tuition, you drop out, you go back.
You have kids.
You run through all these stumbling blocks, counselors saying people like you should go get a job.
Right.
Or do something else.
Yeah.
Or you really shouldn't go to college.
Right.
Those kinds of things. Is it on? Okay. So I don't know how to make it louder. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So, I had those, but I really didn't give a damn about that, even when I was really young. Although it affected me, I think I always had my way of thinking and seeing the world. Even when they used to have those standardized tests and you would have these questions. Now, I'm thinking, okay, this word means this here, but it also means something else in the vernacular. And I wondered why they didn't include that as part of that whole discussion. So those are ways that my curiosity sort of led me on this journey that I'm still pursuing. And when I went to, well, I'll get back to that later. I'll let John go now.
Thanks, Mildred. Thank you, Mark, Mary, John, Judy, Edie, and Mildred, my good friend. We're on the unceded and stolen lands of the Navajos, Apaches, and 19 pueblos of New Mexico, where these tribes have lived since time immemorial. We still live, play, dance, feast, and celebrate their cultural lives. Making this statement does not decolonize the state of New Mexico, but it is a step in the right direction to acknowledge the First Peoples here. So Mildred and I have similarities in our backgrounds. I started early in my young life making things with my hands, mud shapes, strings of moss, necklaces, drawing images in the dirt. I made purses or bags out of torn and folded newspaper. We didn't have a kindergarten where I lived in the rural area, but in the first grade I met up with crayons, library paste, and tempera paint. Like all Indian kids, I smelled them and ate them. Crayons smell delicious, but the waxy crumbles are really unpleasant. Tempera has a chalky, strange taste, and library paste can be a tasty treat. My difficulty with white people telling me what to paint started in the first grade. The rule was if we finished our work, we were allowed to paint. That was my daily goal. I made a painting of children dancing around a snowy mountain that the teacher liked, so she said she would place it in the glass case in the hall. But then Valentine's Day came, and everybody was engaged with cutting red paper hearts. I'd never seen anything so pretty, so I painted red hearts all around the sky. But the teacher let me have it. She said I ruined the painting, and she refused to hang it. So that was my beginning, with white people dictating what I was going to do, how I could do it, or whether I could even make art. So when I was 8 years old, I went to work for the Nisei, who returned from the internment camps. I worked year-round to help support my dad and the family. When I was 13, a bunch of us workers rode in the back of a pickup into town to see the Saturday matinee about the painter Toulouse-Lautrec. This was my first knowledge of seeing an artist in action, so I asked the neighbor man down the road to take a photo of me dressed as an artist. I put a hat on that I made into a beret. I put axle grease from my dad's truck on a piece of cardboard, and I got down on my knees, not to pray, but to turn myself into an artist because Toulouse was a short guy. I thought this would help make me an artist. I still have this brownie, black and white photo. When I was 16, my dad let me send away for the famous artist course that was advertised in a matchbook. The teachers were all men, and nearly all posed holding a burning cigarette, so I took up smoking, thinking that would turn me into an artist.
So we can't see Judy yet. Chris is, oh, yay! Thank you so,
Judy.
so,
Hey, Judy.
You can see me now. I'm here.
I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to what Mildred and Jaune have just said about their inspiration or drive and first experiences wanting to be an artist. I know you had a little disruption as we were trying to set you up.
No, I'd be happy to give a quick story. You'll have to excuse me all because my voice is kind of in and out. I came to British Columbia for an exhibition of Chicanes at the University of British Columbia Anthropology Museum. So 33 of us came, which was a remarkable show, but 4 of us got COVID, and I was one of them. So I have been sequestered, and I'm just at the final end of recovery. So I so wanted to be with you. So please excuse my failing voice and my sort of weak disheveled character here. My story is simple. I went to elementary school being a non-English speaker. Mostly Spanish was in my household. My grandmother was raising me as my mother worked as a single parent in a factory, in a Goodyear tire factory. And so I was raised with Francisca caring for me. So when I was going to elementary school, it was the first time that I was dealing with English. And there was a very wise and kind of wonderful art teacher in school who gave me big pieces of newsprint and shiny little silver cans of tempera paint. And because I was very shy and afraid to speak wrong or incorrectly, I didn't speak. And she allowed me to paint during the reading sessions and other places where I would have to communicate. And as a result, at the end of this painting period, she would say, tell us about the painting. And really, literally, that's how I learned English. I started to communicate about the pieces I was making and saying, this is my house, my family, and I always feel very grateful for a teacher who had insight about what a young child needed. And my mother kept many of those paintings, and I've seen them now since her passing as like crumbling newsprint papers. But there was the beginning of this need to communicate visually. So that's the beginning of my art career.
Great, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I grew up in Berkeley, California, and 2 doors from my house was this congregational church that wasn't really a church. But it was a church, but it was more of a community center. And I really began my art career there. And at the time, I thought everything was like that because the church was fully integrated. And that's where I began I guess I was around 3 when I started my dance career, and I danced until I was 27. And then, but at the same time, at this church, I could go in and use, they had art classes. And there was, the caretaker would let me in there anytime to make things. And my parents were antique dealers, so there were always fragments of furniture. My father would whittle, my mother would mix the stains for the furniture. And so there were all those kinds of things that I was accessible to. And at this same church, I got to see Leontine Price and Duke Ellington perform. And I thought everyone was like that. And then I went to elementary school, and that's how I got to saying, okay, this is probably a glass of water, but what else is it? Or everything you want to know about this glass with this water in it is right there. And so those kinds of questions were always in my head. Anyway, that's, yeah.
I'm going to jump ahead to one of the questions that I'd sent to you guys earlier, which is that, and it relates a little bit to what Mildred said, which is all three of you draw upon popular culture and real material, documentary photographs, actual objects, coloring books, signage, newspapers, and that connection to the real, whether it's the actual physical object, and sometimes the object represented with an emphasis and scale. I just want to know what attracts you to those ideas and work, to utilizing those kinds of things in your work. And maybe, Jaune, do you want to start?
Sure. I think, like Mildred, that was a nice thing she talked about being curious.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So like Mildred, growing up and being curious about everything, I think is part of a child that will maybe do something in the arts or become an engineer or become a scientist. Science and art are closely related. So I have one granddaughter who wants to be a scientist, and my other granddaughter wants to be an artist, and watching them go back and forth asking questions about things and what they see and how they see color and shape. But I was like that, and the bookmobile came down the road, and I read books incessantly. I just read all the time. So I think young people who will become an artist, I think that's just part of it's built in, they're part of their DNA.
Judy, do you want to add anything to that? I was hoping this would be more conversational, but these technical things have...
Well, when you're talking about real objects and material that comes from our daily living, and I relate to that not specifically more as an artist. When I started to really try to figure out how to make art that was relevant to my own experience in my family and where I came from. I was born in Watts. At the time, it was an African-American community. It was a small Latino community also. And of course, that's transformed now. And then I grew up most of the majority of my life in a place called Pacoima. And it's totally, it's actually an indigenous word. And it's only known really by the fact that Richie Valens grew up there. And Louis Valdez made a movie called Baca, recording about Richie's life. And Richie was in my church, and he was in my neighborhood, and so was Cheech Lane, so that sort of positioned it. But what was taught me for me is when I came out of the university, there was a giant civil rights movement going on. And I was looking for a way to be able to use this addiction or this desire looking for a way for my art to have meaning. And that's why I started to use real life things. I've taken 3 or 4 art history courses, and I was looking at European art and really never looking to the north or to the south. And therefore, I didn't have references in that. And I didn't want to follow those references. I wanted to look at the Aztec calendars, to look at the tattoos and the lowriders and the things in the street that actually had meaning for me and could be related to by the people that I knew. So my search for meaning came out of popular cultural imagery, came out of daily life. And that's why I started to incorporate even the newspaper article in the morning that talked about a shooting in a neighborhood, or that talked about people being taken at the border. All of those things became the sources of my thinking.
Great. So, you mentioned the civil rights movement, and all 3 of you have been involved in organizing. And I just wanted maybe to talk a little bit about, did your politics find your art, or did your art find your politics, or is it one thing, because we're complete beings?
As artists, we're part of the world, so it's not separate from me. It's a part of who I am as a person, growing up with parents who were a community and activists and political activists. That was a part of who I am. And hearing stories and participating in, I grew up in Berkeley. And so starting with, the civil rights movement, the free speech movement, the Black Panther Party, all the political kinds of things that were happening during that time were just a part of my experience in my life living and growing up in this area. And in addition, if you were African American or not, and wanted the Black vote, you came to our house first. And if my mom and my parents would put up a sign, everyone in that area would vote that way. So that was a part of who I am. And as I said earlier, my work is just an extension of who I am, and I tell my story that way. It's about, and it's been said numerous times, it's about making the invisible visible. And that's what I continuously, because all of us are a part of this story and what makes up this country. And yes, we are so grateful to the Native Americans for letting us use it, because it's still their land.
John, I wondered if, Mildred talked about making the visible invisible. You also, all of you, but in particular your work, often comments on the double meaning of things, or presents something very factual that also has another reference, like the Browning of America painting that we have up in the exhibition has multiple references.
Well, that was from Richard Rodriguez's book. When I was a little kid, my stepmother, who was white, would send us out to white churches, and then they would say racist things, and I would come home and ask my dad about it, and my dad would say things like, "You can talk to me about that, and we can discuss that, but you can't say that to white people," he taught me. "You can only think it in your head." And I think that drove me to put a lot of that angst in my paintings. And I can remember I was going to test the white church, so I put a handkerchief out on the ground and said, when the dew came, the handkerchief would be dry if the white God was in charge of my life. So I got up in the morning and I checked the handkerchief, and the handkerchief was wet like everything. So I knew that the white God wasn't in charge of me.
So my mic seems to be working. Sorry about this. Oh, shoot. So it sounds like having voice, which is also another reason why we called the show Poetic Justice, because the work gives voice to your own voice, but also often to ideas and communities. It presents that voice, and that was also a nice reason to also have poets. So.
Say that I agree with both my colleagues here profoundly. But I have to say that I really believe all art is political. All art. No matter what position you take, you're taking a position that is political.
I mean, just the fact that John, Judy, and I are sitting here is a political statement.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we actually, I would say for years, have had admiration for these women.
Yeah.
When in writing the introduction, I noticed I was writing the word celebrate and honor repeatedly because your presence and your impact on the art world, in addition to the amazing work you make, is just such a wonderful thing to be able to celebrate and such a wonderful thing to be able to share. And Judy's comment, and please feel free to be conversational, because I hate being the kind of ringleader, but brings me to another question that I had, which was, are there different times when you felt like your work was being more well received, or more appropriately, more well heard? For instance, when you were early on in your career, maybe the 90s, maybe now, how are those times different, and how does that
Art world
work?
has amnesia. They sleep into, deep amnesia. All three of us were probably really out there in the late 70s, 80s, early 90s, and then all of a sudden, it goes dark. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't stop us from being makers and thinkers and creators of the art world.
No.
And I think that all comes from all three of our upbringing and our determination to tell our story.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to do it. We have to do it. The 1980s was really exciting for me because I was traveling to universities all over this country. Universities were doing a payback for people of color, and so we were always invited to conferences, and Lucy was there, and Harmony was there, and LGBTQ, although we didn't talk about it so much in those days, but it was there, and Judy was there, Mildred was there. We were all there, and it networked us together. If it did nothing, it made us extremely strong. And I remember Jean Fisher giving a lecture in Venice at a Robert Storr conference in Venice, Italy. And I remember Jean Fisher saying, what a waste the 1980s were. That multiculti movement didn't do anything. I'm sorry. It did a lot for my life because it connected me with all of you. We became a national network, and it served me so well because we've stayed in touch and cared about each other.
It was exciting. I think I met you in Worlds in Collision, or was it before that?
Yeah. Yep.
At the San Francisco Art Institute.
Right.
And it was amazing to have all of these thinkers there. And I felt, oh God, I'm so privileged to be a part of this whole group of people.
Yeah. That was an amazing.
Yeah. And then later in the 90s, I think, did you meet Hung Lu later?
I think I met her there.
And then, maybe that. It was in the 90s, I think. That's when I met Lo. And then Judy, I met Judy. I did a stint with the California Arts Council, and I think I had to come talk with you about something. I'm not sure.
You know where we spent so much time together was with Joan Mitchell.
Oh,
Joan Mitchell gave us a grant
Right.
for archiving our work, and they picked 4 people in the United States. They picked a man in New Orleans, Freddie Rodriguez in New York, and you and me. And we bonded really, like, we had so many meetings together and traveled together and shared our work and what we were doing. But that was really a lot that they gave us, the Joan Mitchell grant.
And Judy, I met you, Judy, through Amalia Mesa Banks, I think it was. That's
me
what it
too.
was. But then I knew about you before I met you because you were doing all these murals.
Yep, I did too.
That spoke to a whole nother group of people who were overlooked. The whole Chicano movement, the whole Latin American movement.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was even though we were adjuncts in those big events, in other words, we were the last item on the agenda, and then the multicultural or diversity or women or whatever we were representing at the time. We knew that there was a certain of us that would have fun. This would be the most fun. We'd be able to talk to each other. And I don't think we can ever underestimate the power of A.B. Spellman and the National Center for the Arts, who actually had that whole area where we were funded. And one of the most incredible education for me was going out to review funded people for the NEA that A.B. Spellman sent us out. That's how I met everybody. And it was huge in the education. I'd go to New Mexico, I'd go to Texas, go to the Guadalupe Center, and we would compare notes, and we used it as organizing tools. You know, we might have been working for the NEA reviewing a grant, but truly what we were doing is figuring out how to create a revolution.
And if you don't know A.B. Spellman, he was head of was it the NEA? And now he's at the National African American Museum in Washington, D.C.
He was the head of a program. What was the name of the program? I forget. It was like diversity art or something. It was a special program at the NEA. He did more good there than you could write the national.
In 1992, we celebrated the quincentennial here in the United States, and the president at that time said, it was one of the Bushes, and said at that time that they didn't want any political stuff. And so I didn't see anything coming up on the radar that was going to be an exhibition of anything other than the happy Indians greeting all the white people and the priests, with outstretched arms. And so those were the things that got the grants. So I applied for a grant to the NEA, and I teamed up Native Americans in America as well as Canada, like a writer and an artist together. So like Robert Hoole in Canada and Greg Statz, and got like 30 some artists, I think about 34 together, and put a show, a political show together. So they gave me $12,000, and for the Happy Indians shows, they got $100,000. But we managed to put it together and do that anyway. So there was a little kind of uprising of Native Americans with the Samulik show, which is Columbus turned backwards. And then everything after that faded, everything vanished. Indians were in the shadows again until Standing Rock in George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. And all of a sudden we came out of the shadows, and now the museums are cracking their doors. And it's, all of us are moving through these cracks in the doors in terms of collections. You've got to remember that when they collect art, a rich white person gives them a whole batch, 300 maybe, paintings of Impressionism, and then they'll buy one painting of ours. So they'll have one of Judy's and one of Mildred's and one of mine. Now you can see this is not a balanced collection, but the collections are raving about this right now in the museums. They're raving about their collections.
I've never had so many contacts from museums in my life as in the last 6 months.
It's because we're being discovered.
Careful. That could be dangerous. That was one of the other things I wanted to ask is this is really a significant moment in all of your careers. And how does that feel? And how does that impact what you can do and the impact you can make? And what do you think accounts for this?
Well, the world is changing, period. We're not going back to that. I mean, we have all these interruptions, like what just happened, but it's no going back. We are all here and not going away. And whatever I can do in this small little way to make a change in how one sees and views the world, then I'm going to continue to do that. And it's only through my art, and my way of expressing myself and telling my story, hopefully we will begin to see that we have more in common than one might think. But I just have to say, those who are on this hate binge and on the far right, it's a losing battle. Your days are numbered.
I would say that I just want to add to this idea. The most important to me is that it hasn't changed my view of myself. Now, I'm literally not a step this. Of course, the funding, the capacity to get more funding is a welcome thing. I made a piece 25 years ago called Punch Trinity, and one of the punches is about spirit. The one that actually a lot of it has to do with this show called Puerto Mexico, and there was two little Mexican, they're like those black saddle images. There would be negative images about Latinos like sleeping or drunk faces, little sleepy guys. And one of them I turned into this piece called The Spirit. And the front of it says, "Wouldn't be like a miracle." And all these pennies are coming down the front. It said, "Founders realizing their errors of the last 500 years that decided only took on people of color for the next 500 years." And the two little brown hands. I made that 25 years ago. And I think I put it on the spirit, and then I made it happen. I've been working on the spirits.
I think was it 1989, I received the Adeline Kent Award at the San Francisco Art Institute. And at the time, South Africa was still a part of apartheid. And I did the piece, 10 Little Children Standing in a Line. One got shot, and then there were 9. And it was an installation that took up all of the gallery space. And when I think about what has just happened in this country, you send your kids to school and they may not come back. That's what we need to be talking about. Every single one of us.
No.
A 4th grade, a whole class, and teachers. We really need to, this is great. I love being a part of I love being an artist, but we have to give voice to situations like this and change. I'm so sick and tired of, we put up altars, we have all these protests, and then slip back into amnesia. And all 54 of those in politics need to do something. And it's up to us.
Pardon me?
Look at the number, I would say, we also have to call it what it is, the loss of these children, the loss of these mass shootings is related to race and white supremacy.
Yes.
Almost every case, the majority of people of color. Call it what it is.
Yes.
And the NRA.
I thought of that piece this morning, actually, Mildred. The piece from the Adeline Kent I was thinking about this morning with the same exact reference. Something I do want to say that's just a side comment related to kind of institutional thinking. I entered this field coming from the side as a maker and from the West Coast, and I am so happy that people are looking at an American art that is broad, an American art that includes women, it includes people of color, and it includes the West Coast and the North and the South. I mean, that is, it kind of touches upon some of these same ideas as Edie's poem. That is what America is. I mean, that's the dream.
Mm-hmm. That poem was so incredible.
I have one comment to make
please.
that's not
you have to use the
related to
mic.
this. It's that in all my adult years in traveling and moving through this career, I've been taught and mentored and helped along the way by so many. And I just want to give a shout out here to Harmony Hammond and to Lucy Lepart, who are here with us. Two women who've been important in that role of teaching and mentoring and supporting me, and also Karita Coffey, and who just retired from IAIA, and Linda Lamahaftua, my friend Mary Rose, who's here, and Emmy Whitehorse, who I went to school with. I just want to say that in all these years, you don't ever accomplish any of this alone or by yourself. Yeah. And I have so many of you to thank for me being here today. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you too. And then I have two friends who traveled here from the San Francisco Bay Area, artist Johanna Pothig, who has been a part of the struggle for her entire art career, and Chris Brown, the renowned composer who did the sound for my video, and they're sitting over there. Should we have them ask questions? Or you have some more to say?
I don't know. I wanted this to be a little bit more organic. The technical difficulties made it a little less organic, but mostly I wanted to be able to hear from you three. And then I just had one last comment, and then I wanted to, if you guys had any other comments you wanted to make, and then we'll go to the audience for Q&A. But we've touched upon this a little bit, but how has the art world changed in the decades that you've been working artists? We've, in terms of we talked a little bit about opportunity, but navigating the world as an artist, has that changed? How has that changed over the last decades?
Has it?
Or it hasn't? Maybe it hasn't.
Well, I guess I'm sitting here, so that's that, and I'd like to thank both you and Mark White for having the courage to bring us all together here, especially now. But in many ways it's changed, but in many ways the art world is still sleeping. And it remains a struggle to make art. But I don't think any of us are going anywhere. So, yeah. And I just wanted to say, before we end this, I know that you have a poem to read, and I wanted to play, I have a tune by Abby Lincoln that I'm going to play and dedicate it to the children of Uvalde.
Great.
Okay. Do you want to do that?
Should I play that?
Sure.
Judy, do you have anything else to add?
I don't. Only that I would say that the art world has not changed, and that there are people who have gotten in the door and now are, like women are becoming directors of museums. You know, Mary is in this position where she can do this show. So there has been the crap that you spoke about, Joan, about the tap the door has let some good people in. And we are the ones who are opening the doors for us. And but until the museums change the boards of directors, until the methods of funding and supporting and creating patronage change, I'm not certain that we're going to see a massive change. It's incremental, and it really means when you hire a person of color or an elected person, somebody who is woke to lead, then we get the change. So that's what I see, and I don't think there is a complete change in these systems yet. The systems still don't function properly. The basic commercial, and I think probably for me in my life, I never cared about that. And so therefore I went happily dancing along in the streets, doing something else, never feeling bound by the fact that I needed to sell work. I just got another job, and I struggled with the university to teach them to do my work both.
I know that it's important, and again, to sort of reiterate some of the things that Judy said, that for those of you who are supporters of museums and institutions, cultural institutions, to look beyond of what's there and to continue to support the broad range of artists that are working and making and thinkers, because you can help to make that change by doing what you can, both financially and even just educationally, opening up your eyes to see the broader world. And you wouldn't be here if you were not interested. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming. But it continues to be a struggle. But it's one that I've just committed to take on. I'm here for the long run.
Yeah.
Great.
You want to do your song?
Oh, should I do this?
Sure.
I have to have you hook this up to play. This is a song by Abby Lincoln called "The World Is Falling Down, Hold My Hand."
I'm done.
Oh, okay. I thought you had a poem.
I'm good.
Oh, okay. I just want to add one last thing, and then we'll go to Q&A. And just that this is the very first project that I worked on with, Mark White was our director, and it came out of a conversation that he and I were having, I think, within our first few virtual conversations, because Mark started during COVID, was artists that we admired and artists that we wanted to work with. And then this kind of came to be. So I want to thank you for that. And then let's go to the audience if anybody has any questions. Okay.
It's been so great to be able to listen to this conversation, and it's so great to finally be able to learn about your art and be able to see it, because as a lifelong visitor of museums and galleries, I don't get to see your work. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm wondering if you can also you've worked with over the years that you think we should be looking for their work, or maybe some younger people coming up that are inspiring you?
You want to go first?
Oh, gosh.
Golly, that's a big one.
That's a big one. That's a tough one. That's hard. I mean, that could take reams of paper, reams. Allison Tsar would be somebody that she's somebody whose work I love, whose work is really important. She's not in a New York gallery. She works out of California. I think she's undervalued.
Right. Her sister,
Yeah,
Leslie.
her sister Leslie, undervalued. We have many in the Native community who are older women, older men who are undervalued. People don't see them. So Joe Feddersen would be one. Lillian Pitt would be one. There are many others.
Oh, God, let's see. Who should I start with? Oh, Dewey Crumpler, Oliver Jackson, Carlos Villa.
Yeah.
Let's see, the women. God, you named some of those.
Yeah.
God, where's my? Now I have amnesia.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so many. They're not in the history books.
No.
And they're not in the mainstream.
Sometimes I think we should make our own history book.
Yeah, we probably should. I mean, many of you didn't even, the art historian and artist, Samela Lewis, who she just passed away yesterday.
Yeah. Oh.
I mean, if you, Black Art on Art, if you just pick up that book and go through it and look at who's there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. And
Judy, do you want to add anything to that? I know it's a fear of omission when asked
I
that.
know, and I've left out so many people. Johanna ought to be showing here. I mean, really.
yeah.
Definitely, and we just lost Malia Luisi in Rust.
Yeah.
And I was going to say Johanna, I think underestimated and viewed. Literally, almost all of murals, because muralism has been seen as a denigrated form in general, as a form that is a form for people of color and therefore of less importance, and not serious art.
And, let's not wait till they die. Then all of a sudden their work is selling for millions of dollars. I mean, even look at Ruth Osawa, whose work now rightfully is being shown everywhere.
Yeah.
But she got very little recognition when she was living.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was a working woman and mother.
She helped to start the School for the Arts in San Francisco. I mean, she was a real trailblazer.
Yeah. And Carlos Villa.
And Carlos Villa.
Work he did.
Worlds and Collisions. We were all there.
Yeah.
He's just now getting his recognition, but he's not here.
Yeah.
Johanna?
I do have a question. I love seeing, speaking of murals, Judy, your exhibition here, and wondered, bringing in the outside parts of your murals into the museum space. I just wanted to ask a little bit about your thinking on that. I love showing the design, but just bringing that form of art into this kind of space. I think it's great. I'm just wondering about how you choose or what forms that you go, how you plan for that.
Were you able to hear that, Judy?
Not at all.
Okay, it was Johanna, and I will make it a little bit shorter. She was interested to see your bringing mural work into the gallery and into the museum, and the selections of showing the portions in the studies.
How you choose,
how you choose to do that and how you go about that. Is that right?
Because of my retrospective and recent retrospective at MoLA, the Museum of Latin American Art, a group of Latin American filmmakers did an extraordinary installation on the Great Wall. So for the very first time in a museum setting, you can get a sense of the people who made it and a sense of the scale of the work and the comprehensive quality of it. And then we have more maybe blown up to full scale the drawings so that you can see in the gallery setting and understand them as works of art on paper. I'm going to be opening at the Getty on June 12th, and my work will be there. The drawings for the Olympic mural will be in one gallery, and in the second gallery will be the drawings of the Italian Renaissance murals. And what I think is really interesting is that continuum of muralism from the very earliest of times to contemporary muralism is being made by the curator, and including the blow up of the run around the freeway almost at full scale, So what he's doing, which I think is remarkable, is speaking about the fugitive quality of murals, because censorship, in a sense, happens in the rear. In other words, what you don't maintain ends up disappearing. And that is a method of disappearing murals if they're too political or if they are irritating to certain members of the community. And I think to put these together is a very remarkable thing that the Getty is doing for the very first time.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that's an important aspect, to bring it into that setting so that people can get to see muralism and this long, method of creating public art in relationship to the fine art world.
I also want to say the large blow-up of the section of the Great Wall to scale really gives a physical impact about the size of that work. And that, I think, is really quite striking to see a portion of it to scale. So, okay, one.
Thank you, everybody. This is an extraordinary show. To come many months ago to the opening and to see this in Santa Fe, and the range of each of your creative, your art, the range of each of your work here in Santa Fe is amazing. So thank you. What I wanted to bring up is that, when we have to think about evolving, when we have to think about Ukraine, we have been surrounded by fires for months in New Mexico. We're in the middle of the climate emergency.
Yes.
And with so many issues, has the climate emergency been recent? It's been going on forever, but in the last 40 years, we've known everything we need to know. But in the last 5 years, we know too much. So is any of that creeping into your work now? How do you see blending this emergency that's for the whole planet at one time? Do you see that creeping into your art?
Oh, yeah.
Here.
Oh, yeah.
Here.
Oh, yeah. It's in all.
So, Judy,
This is
the questions about climate change entering, Jaune has an answer, but so you're on board, climate change entering into the work.
Yeah. This is world famous Mary Del Rubenstein, by the way, who has been on this subject forever. Mary Del, thank you. Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah.
Anything to add? Yeah. Okay, maybe one last question. Okay. Since I didn't call out Meridel, I should probably not call out Tanya, but I just did it.
Yeah.
Well, this is something that you guys have all addressed, and in the questions also. And it's the idea of amnesia within the art world. And also the idea of the art world doors cracking to let some of you all in. And the sort of great number of exhibitions at museums and galleries lately, where they're trying to have exhibitions like this one. And what I want to point out is I think that some of the amnesia comes from the fact that when these exhibitions go away, people forget because the museums haven't collected the work and included them in permanent collections, like Jaune was saying. You might get a collection by some wealthy donor from their family of 100 Impressionist paintings, but they didn't collect you guys.
No.
And so the only way to change art history is to have patrons of museums across the world to collect your work, and if they're not collecting it themselves, support museums when they try to collect it, to be able to have you inserted into art history permanently, so that in 200 years, when we're all gone, and people are looking at museums, in Europe or here, that they see that you were part of the art history. In my opinion, that's the only way the amnesia will go away. And I'd like to ask if you have ideas about how we can make that happen.
We need more collectors who collect from people of color, and you are doing an incredible job. She's Turner Carroll Gallery here with us, and who's been working on this for years and years of presenting artists who make political work and artists of color. So you're doing your part in stimulating collectors to purchase. Your ads and your gallery have been advocates for that. So I thank you for that because you are doing a big part of this. Yes, we need more collectors like the Nortons and Oprah Winfrey, who make collections of people of color, but it's just not here yet.
So, we just added yesterday, it has to go through some processes, 3 works by 3 women artists, 2 of Nancy Holt, Mildred Howard, and Laura Aguilar. So, really building and broadening the diversity of our collection, which is a big focus of our collection policy that was rewritten during the pandemic. So, thank you.
It's a whole circle. It takes the gallery, takes the museum, takes the collector to make this happen.
Yes. Well, I think that will be it. I want to thank all of you. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Mildred. Thank you, Jaune. Thank all of you for coming.
Thank you, Judy.